Welcome, friends, to the National... Why do you laugh every time I try and do a proper introduction? I just see you laughing
Because you sound like
away.
a drunk bastard. Just, welcome, friends! Have another drink with me!
Have you ever seen that advert with Orson Welles doing the champagne? He's absolutely hammered. He just goes, French champagne. Welcome, friends, to the National Treasures interview series. National Treasures is a podcast that I, Will Duggan, and my friend, either below or above, depending on how we edit this, Laura Lexx, do, where we go on lovely days out to old houses, old castles, nice walks, anything that takes our fancy. As it may have passed you by, that's not been able for the past year or so, so we have decided to bring nice days out to you. It's essentially uneducated TED Talks. How are you, Laura? Are you well?
I'm all right, mate. My dog's at the vet, so that's making me a little bit edgy today, but I'm quite glad to be doing this because it's genuinely distracting, you know? How are
Yes,
you?
well.
What's the commute like? Is it all right?
Yeah, in the car mainly.
Yeah. I wouldn't expect you to walk anywhere unless you had to. Today, we are off virtually, obviously. We haven't left the house in months. But we're going to Cheshire. Ooh. We're going to meet someone who works at not one, but two locations. And actually, I've actually visited both of them, so I'm really excited. They're two really different places that we're talking about today, which I kind of think they are showcasing really well two sides of the same era in terms of old school
The
wealth.
past.
Pardon, my darling.
The era is the past, just letting people know.
Yes. Good. Glad you joined in. One place is all sort of like, aren't we fancy? We live in a big house. We've got everything. And sort of looking at how you'd live if you'd accumulated a lot of wealth. And the other property that we're looking at is more like, these are the people that actually physically not accumulated the wealth, but created the wealth for this one person to accumulate. So we can sort of look at life if you were the dude in the big house and if you were the dude making the money for the dude in the big house, which is quite exciting. So the places we are going to Quarry Bank Mill, which is a textile factory in Wilmslow, and we're also going to be talking about Lyme Park, which is an absolutely enormous fancy house in Disley. And to tell us all about these places, I'm really happy to welcome the wonderful Sara Smallman. Hello.
Hello, Sara.
Hello.
Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
joining us. Why are we talking to you about these places? Tell us why it's you in the seat.
I've been volunteering for the National Trust at Lyme Park for the last 3 years. I would be going into my fourth season next week, which is when we would reopen for the new year. And then I also I got made redundant in 2019. Yeah, 2019. I got made redundant in 2019 and I went, do you know what? I hate being a customer service manager. It's rubbish. I can't be bothered. So I went, I'm just going to take a job working at Quarry Bank Mill.
Okay, so let's just do like a little potted history of both of them. We'll start at the quarry as we're already there. The quarry was a textile mill? Now I'm saying quarry, I'm doubting myself, but it's just a mill in a quarry. It's not a quarry.
You can quarry cotton, definitely, yeah.
I'm so confused.
It's a mill.
It's a mill.
But it's not in a quarry. It's just a mill next to a river. So it's next to the river Bollin, which they chose because it ran really, really fast. So Samuel Gregg, who was the owner of the mill, who built it, he decided to go, the River Bollin runs really, really, really fast. So I'm going to put my mill here and I can have a big water wheel and make everything spin and make myself lots of money.
So Samuel Gregg started Quarry Bank Mill. And what year did this mill open?
It's like the late 1700s. So this is when the Industrial Revolution was really getting going, really starting. And he obviously built his mill and he decided to find some people to work there. Now, people were working in the centre of towns, not good. And so Samuel Gregg was like, where am I going to get people? I'm in the middle of the countryside. And so he went and basically got kids from workhouses and orphans and went, you can be my workforce. This will be very, very fun.
Oh, no.
What was he like as a because when I think of like those kind of industrialists, my brain goes to sort of two spectrums. At one end, I've got the workhouse guy from Oliver, who's just like terrible, obviously, and then at the other end, I've got the Cadburys, and who I think, whilst I'm sure they wouldn't pass muster these days, were quite nice. Where did the Greggs fall on that sort of scale from awful to reasonably okay?
Well, they didn't like beating their children.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, I mean,
Didn't
in
beat 'em.
Manchester, it's
So
a win.
They fed them.
It's a win.
Was that
They
a plus
fed
point?
them.
They fed them. This is
It
being an
was, it
industrialist at that time is like being a boyfriend these days. The bar is so low to be good.
No.
So I'm assuming Lyme Park is older than the 1700s. It looks like one of those places that has been developed forever.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Lyme Park. There's been a residence at Lyme since the late 1400s. The
Fuck
family made it
about.
there.
That is old, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, really old. It doesn't look like it because you look at it and you're like, wow, this is like Regency as hell. But yeah, it wasn't. Basically, they had this house. It was like a little kind of tiny Tudor manor house, and they've just put loads and loads of bits onto it as the years went by, like added a bit on there. So they were continually developing the property up until I think the late 1800s, really. They're the Lee family, L-E-G-H, the Lee family. Big old family. Their money comes from a big battle at the end of the 1300s called the Battle of Cressy, where they got an annuity off King Edward for saving his son, the Black Prince. So that's where that money came from. But they were really, really wise, and they married lots and lots of different rich families in the area. So any house probably in the northwest, you will find connections back to Lyme. And there was a family living at Lyme until 1946, which is when they gave it to the National Trust. So they've lived there that whole time.
Wow.
Through everything. Yeah.
And there's nobody living there now. They don't live in a bit of it while the National Trust has to. Because some houses do have that, don't they?
Yeah, some houses do that. The National Trust doesn't do that at all with Lyme. Yeah, there's a bit of controversy with the family though, because back in the early 1800s, the line that they've got now is actually an illegitimate line. So in the 70s,
Scandal! Love the scandals!
Massive scandals. So Lady Newton was really into family history, and when she was writing her family history down at the turn of the beginning of the 1900s, she stopped at that point in time because she didn't want to go, well, actually, we're all illegitimate. It's all good. She just didn't write about it. So yeah, it was a guy called Thomas Peter Lee who had 7 different children with 7 different women, and he was really into maids. So he, you know.
I get it.
Yeah, gave it to a lot of mates, but he did look after all of his children, and they all inherited something.
All right, so we've prepared some questions for you. So at Lyme Park, you do tours, is it?
I'm a room guide, so I'll be in a
nice.
different room depending on where they put me. Yeah, normally we have every single room pretty much in the house open that's available for visitors, but during COVID and the restricted opening, it's just been like 8 rooms. So
Okay.
I know a lot about those 8 rooms there.
What's your favourite room then at Lyme Park?
My favourite room is probably the yellow bedroom.
Ooh.
The yellow bedroom is actually 3 rooms altogether, and it was a massive suite that was refurbished for James II when he came to visit when he was the Duke of York, because he knew Richard Lee and they were friends. So he was like, yeah, mate, I'm going to come and visit you. And James II was like, yeah, cool, let's come round. So Richard Lee was kind of panicking, spent a crap ton of money refurbishing these 3 rooms. So you've got a drawing room, you've got this state bedroom, which isn't really yellow, and then you've got like the little bathroom to the side. But the important thing about these set of rooms, if you go to visit Lyme Park, is that that's where the refurbishment and the renovation of the house went from it being this little kind of Tudor manor, which wasn't really that important, to being this big kind of like Palladian pad that it is now, because that kick-started everything else and all the rest of the redevelopment, because they didn't do it and go, oh, do you know what, we'll do all of this all at once. They did it piecemeal. So he put in sash windows, and the earliest examples of sash windows in the country, even before Chatsworth, which is very, very important. I've got to add. So you got put in there. So imagine coming back from London and your husband's like, yeah, I've got 3 new windows. Look at these, banging. And you're just like, well, where are the rest of them? Yeah, we'll do them another time. And that's kind of what it was like for his wife.
That's very much my approach to decorating and buying. I've got 2 new tea towels. I'll do the rest later.
So were they happy with this royal visit, or was it the sort of royal visit that like bankrupts a family?
So they did spend a lot of money refurbishing it. He spent absolute fortunes on these fireplaces, which when you look at them, you're like, fireplace. It's all right. It's not one of the ones that knocks your socks off when you visit a house. And you're like, oh my God, that fireplace. It's just like, oh, that's a fireplace. But he actually wrote to his wife and was like, Liz, this fireplace, man, it cost me a lot of money, but you know, it's amazing. It's cracking. So it's like the equivalent of your husband going, I'm in Curry's and I've got a well good deal on a plasma TV and I'm bringing it home. And that's kind of what he wrote to her saying, and this is what he came back with, this big marble thing. But we don't actually have evidence that the Duke of York actually visited. We don't know. There's nothing. We just don't know. The house itself is built in like a courtyard, so it's like square, and the house was one part, and then they added this part on, and then this part, and then the big front that you see, so you see in all the pictures and everything, it's like the view. That was the last bit that was added on by Giacomo Leone in the 1700s, and that
Say
was
that
kind
again.
of finished.
What name was that? You threw that in, and I was like, who's this?
Giacomo Leone.
I love that name, Giacomo Leone.
Giacomo Leone. He sounds like he should make really good pizza. Yeah. But he was a massively amazing architect at the time, and everybody was like, oh my God, Giacomo Leone, he's amazing. And so they got him in to put this front on. And then about 30, 40 years later, they got another talented young architect called Lewis Wyatt, and he was like, oh, this is rubbish, let's make it better. And he came in and basically rejigged all of the inside and made it into a party pad for the Regency Mr. Darcy type character that we have there at Lyme.
Oh.
Be incredibly rude and pop in there. Is this why in the main hall the decorations are a mix between Baroque and Regency? Because when I was doing some research, because I have done, might not come across, but I have, a lot of the comments were about the almost clash, but working clash between Baroque and Regency style decoration. Is that because of this Giacomo Leone and Charles II Playboy friend?
Kind of, yeah. So originally it was quite Tudory, and then, you know, people always think of historical houses as being very much like, oh, they've always been the same and that's how they keep them because it's an historical house. But if you live in one of these houses, you're going to be doing it up. You're going to be adding bits on. You're going to be changing it and decorating it and doing whatever you want to it. You had the James II like renovation, and they took out a lot of the Tudory bits in there. You can still see them if you look, but there is a massive, and I'm going to use my very fancy word, juxtaposition between the drawing room, which is right next to the yellow bedroom, which the drawing room is very Jacobean. It's very, the ceiling's all kind of like it's got bits hanging from it, it's all kind of vaulted, it's all very heavy and quite wooden, and there's a massive impressive fireplace which is just like, oh my God, and everybody loves this fireplace because it's great. It's just Tudory and beautiful, and you can kind of feel like Queen Elizabeth just like breathing down your neck in there, like, oh my God. And then the next room is dead clean and modern and very much like as you would expect in a Jane Austen drama, and that's because they just redecorated and then they kept them the bits the same.
Hi, it's a quick interruption to us, by us, to say thank you to our newest patron.
Thank you very much.
Laura Elliott.
Thank you, Laura Elliott.
Thank you for coming along and checking out the Patreon. We hope you're enjoying the content that's on there. For those of you that haven't perused the Patreon just yet, you can get stuff such as signed photos. Ooh! You can get stuff such as extra video content. So this video that you're halfway through now, you can watch more of it. Ooh!
See all the bits that we cut out because they were, particularly in the one that you're watching this week, going to get me fired from my job.
You can also hear the first episode of our brand new podcast, the Years and Years podcast, which will be going out fortnightly on Patreon for subscribers only. And this week we discuss the year 1750.
Very interesting year. Sorry if I laughed throughout a lot of that. I just love that we're giving out signed photos of ourselves. Who the hell do we think we are?
We're very important.
Right, back to Sara Smallman. Thank you again, Laura.
Oh, Laura Elliott, not me.
No, Laura Elliott.
Yes,
thanks to you as well. Thank you, Laura
Thank
Elliott.
you, Laura Elliott.
Bye.
You're a millionaire in these times. You've got Lyme Park. They would quite often import cool animals to live in the grounds and have a bit of a menagerie. What would you have running wild in the deer parks of Lyme Park if you were on the throne?
To be quite honest, there is in the main, the formal gardens, there is an army of Canadian geese. So that attack you when you go and eat your sandwich. So anything that would chase away a Canadian goose would be great for me. Because they get very possessive. That would work. And there's a lake. We could put alligators in that lake to eat those Canadian geese because they are really, really vicious and quite scary. And sometimes you'll be sat in the staff room and one of them is chasing a small child across the garden and you're like,
Will, what would you have?
Well, I think I'd I'd like zebras.
Yeah, I was going to say zebras. That would just be so cool to
zebras.
look out the window and see zebra running about.
But the thing is, though, I'd have an issue, and I don't want to be all ethical about it, because my ethics are Bible and so. No, I get really sad. Do you been to Knowsley Safari Park, Sarah?
I haven't. I'm deprived.
Well, don't bother. The saddest lion you'll ever see. The king of the Serengeti on a rainy day on Merseyside. I'd feel really bad taking animals that I want. I'd love a rhino, but they're having a bad enough time as it is.
Yeah, but this is the 18th century and nobody cared then at all.
8 peacocks, 2 zebras, a llama, and 4 elephants.
Elephants?
shoot
You'd
one of
go
the-
full Lord Bath and have elephants, would you?
And a bear.
A bear.
And a bear.
A
Yeah.
bear. I'd
Can I
love
ask
to
you a
have
question?
a whale.
Just on the grass.
Have a
Whale.
reservoir made or something and have a whale in it.
What kind of whale?
Orca. Only
Wow,
if I've got
bang.
18th century sensibilities. Obviously now I'd never keep a whale in captivity, I'd never keep a zebra in captivity. But if I was back then and I really didn't care, 18th century folks didn't, fully having a whale.
What's the most endangered animal you'd happily eat?
Now,
Yeah. For your tea, tonight.
a tofu?
They're everywhere. Rubbish. Sarah? Would you eat a golden eagle?
I think it'd be quite nice. It depended how you served it up.
Yes. Well done, Sarah. Well done.
So, Quarry Bank Mill, if you had to work there, if say you were an orphan child back in the day, what job are you hoping you get given and what job are you hoping you do not get for fear of death and or losing fingers?
To be quite honest, all of the jobs that they got the children to do were awful.
Oh no.
Every single one of them.
Oh,
I was quite liking the Gregg family up to this point.
that's not the answer I wanted.
Yeah, all
kind
of
of
the
jobs
jobs
would
were
they
pretty
do?
bad.
What other kind of jobs?
They had to crawl around
No.
under the looms, didn't they, to get scraps out and stuff if you were a really runty child.
Yeah, but the really small children used to do that. And then you'd have spinners and you'd have weavers. It was basically a child workforce up until a certain point. So they had the apprentice house, which was where they just basically used to churn out these kids who would then go, at the end of it, they'd be indentured. So you would work there essentially for free. And then they would feed you and make sure you had clothes and make sure you had a bed to sleep in or share it with probably a girl that you didn't really like or a boy maybe. They always had a lot more girls as well because girls were better workers and boys were troublemakers. So they had a lot more girls there. So it was quite bitchy, I imagine, at Quarry Bank Mill. So I'm going to be honest, I don't think I'd like it very much. Not really.
I I really like how when you were saying that girls are better workers, Laura's face took on quite a smug look, and then you went, but it's quite bitchy, and her face just fell. She's hoping it's leaving the edit, but it's staying in.
If you weren't the millionaire with the menagerie, what job would you want at Lyme Park if you were staff?
If I was staff, I think the best job for a woman there would be to be the housekeeper, because you're basically like the head cow there, and you can do what you want, and you're in charge. You get to look after all of your maids, and you're also kind of on a level footing with the butler, who's like the boss. So, and you get your own room as well. You don't have to share with anybody. So, I think that'd be the best fun, and the family trust you as well. So, I think that the sort of job, be a good job to have.
Is that the sort of job that you'd start as a scullery maid and make your way up to housemaid, or is that the sort of thing that you trained for and got employed externally? What was the promotion chain? Was it an internal or an external?
Was it advertised on Reed or Monster? What kind of thing is the housemaid getting?
So a lot of the time, girls you would stay with a family usually for like your whole life, and you've got to think that the Lee family didn't just have the house at Lyme; they also had a house in Belgravia as well. I think it was number 8 Belgrave Square. So they also had that house. So you'd have your housekeeper at Lyme, and you'd have your housekeeper down in London too. So they were like double jobs for people, but then you'd have your key people that you'd take with you. Scullery maids didn't tend to go all the way up. Not everybody, because there's not enough jobs, but you usually have one girl who maybe would work her way up. Or you might say, do you know what, Mrs. Whatever at Dunham Massey, her housekeeper's amazing, so we're just going to poach her, and you just offer her some more money. So that happened too, quite a lot.
That's quite fun.
Would the housemaid, or obviously at this time your servants, your downstairs people, there was no minimum wage. Would a housemaid, would it be a decent living for someone in the working class in the Northwest at that time? Or would even they still be scrimping and scraving? Scraving, it's not a word, but you know what I mean.
It would pay all right. The other option would be to send your children to the apprentice house or the workhouse. People were having so many kids, they couldn't feed them. The Industrial Revolution displaced a lot of people, so you'd have families who had farms and had their own income and growing their own crops, and then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, we don't do that anymore, so you can either go to the mill, you can go to the workhouse, or you can go into service. And those were the 3 options, and to be honest, out of the 3, I'd try and get in service rather than go to the mill or go to the workhouse.
Yeah, for sure. At least you're up all day and all night and it's exhausting, but yeah, at least
I think it's a real problem that we have with fiction in this country, that we really glorify that period and that station. Like, I think all of us could agree that well, Laura definitely, because she's been reading lots of Stalin this week, but no man is better than any other man. But the fact that with Downton Abbey, that kind of thing, we do forget that it was a tough life, no matter what you were doing. Should we lighten the mood with a quiz?
Yes, have you got some questions for us?
I do have some questions for you. Okay, so Thomas Daniers was the knight who fought in the Battle of Crecy and won the annuity that later purchased the land that became Lyme by winning, or helping to win, a battle against the French. But what did Thomas do that went down in Lyme legend, and how old was he?
Did he wrestle a Canada goose?
Married at... Well, no, because getting married at like 11 wasn't that weird then, was it?
He didn't have syphilis, aged 46.
Plant a walled garden. The Crusades? Was that happening?
The Crusades? Was he one of the 12 disciples?
Was he the narrator of Thomas the Tank Engine?
So the full answer is, at the Battle of Crecy, the Black Prince, he lost his royal standard, which is what you need to control your troops in battle, because he'd been out lads' night away, France, in Caen. He'd lost it somewhere, probably a whorehouse, don't know. And they saw it on the battlefield. The Frenchmen had it. So all of our lads went battling after the French guy, French guy's like, "You're not having this, mate." And they're like, "Yeah, we are." And so they chopped his arm off and returned the standard back to English lines, with the Frenchman's arm still attached. But he was 16 when that happened. So I try and explain it to kids and like going, "Oh my God, a night." And I'm like, no, it's like a year 10. It's like a group of year 10 boys in France fighting some other year 10 boys who are French. In the drawing room, there is a harp made by Sebastian Erard that Thomas Lee purchased for his daughter Ellen, and she would give performances for friends and family. But what is it, specifically, that women in the early 1800s were not allowed to do? I mean, there's lots of things, but can you think of one? It's not vote, but I mean, that is one. It's to do with like, you know, performing and things.
I've got it. Is it? No, do you know what, Laura? You can guess first.
Were they not allowed to have the harp between their legs? Did they have to, like, play it side saddle? That's my guess.
That was going to be my guess.
You'd both be wrong.
Or was
so.
it fingering, maybe? Not allowed to get too sexy with the strings.
No, it's not that.
All right, Will, over to you.
Were they not allowed to perform for groups of men unless everyone thought she was a brazen hussy?
You nearly had it then. Nearly. You ruined it with the second half.
Okay, they were allowed to perform.
You were.
Back off to anyone. Apart from God himself.
They weren't allowed to perform in public, so you could perform for your friends.
Yeah.
But you couldn't perform for like people. You couldn't have like, you know, the village round, because it was seen as like a ladylike and you weren't allowed to do it. Okay, so at Lyme we have an amazing clock collection, which was donated by Sir Francis Lee, and he was private equerry to Princess Margaret. And this collection has clocks going back to the late 1600s. But what is Roman striking?
Does the clock go, "Caesar is great," at 2 o'clock?
Infamy! No.
At 2
That would be
brute.
really
Oh, it's 5 o'clock. Is Roman striking, like, did they have fewer hours in the day? Oh.
You've just gone completely off. Yeah, it's nothing to do with
cold
that.
now. You're very cold.
Yeah, very cold.
Does the 15, 30 and 45.
Oh, I like that.
Not just the hour. So it bing bong bings at 1/4 past, 1/2 past, 1/4 to. I think bing bong bings is the watchmaker's preferred term.
That's a technical term, yes. Most fancy clocks do strike at 1/4 past, 1/2 past and 1/4 to. So yeah. It's to do with the bing bongs and it's to do with the numbers.
Are the bing bongs different? Is it bing bong rather than bing bing?
Go on then, put us out of our misery. We'll have to call this one a draw.
I think it is.
No.
I think it's maybe half a point each.
Still
Because
a draw, though.
the Roman striking's all to do with the numbers. So normally when, like the Roman numeral for 4 is IV. Yeah, it is. It is. But then if you look at a clock that's got Roman numerals, it's normally just 4 ones. Yeah.
Oh.
So you'll notice this when you go to houses now. You'll go, actually, that's 4 ones, not an IV. That's really weird. And I never picked up on this. Now, Roman striking is something that they put in place so you didn't have to wind your clock as much. So if you've got one that's got 4 ones at number 4, once it gets to number 4, it'll go bong, 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 bong. And you're like, okay, 4 times. But when it gets but with a Roman striking clock, which would have the IV, I hope I'm being really clear with this because you're both looking at me as if I'm really
No, yeah. This is just my concentrating face.
when it gets to one that's got an IV, it won't go bong, 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 bong. It'll go bong, bing. And it means that you don't have to wind your clock as often. So that particular clock is called a Roman striking clock. But yeah.
In the spirit of communism, we're having a draw.
Solidarity.
Sara, if anyone's not aware of Quarry Bank Mill or Lyme Park, or surely now they want to go and visit, But to just wet their whistle a little bit more, when or what in like popular culture would they know these things from?
With Quarry Bank Mill, they're really handy because they had a series out recently with the BBC called The Mill, and yeah, it's just filmed there, and all of the bits are filmed there. It's great. And it
It's like
tells
that
you
question was
everything about
designed
it.
for you.
Exactly. So for Quarry Bank Mill, you could just watch that, and it tells you all about the Industrial Revolution, and most importantly, the kids who'd work there.
Okay, and when the world's open again, hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months, fingers crossed, why would you implore people to go to Lyme and Quarry Bank? What is it about them that you just think is special and makes you work there and love it?
I mean, there's lots of different things. Quarry Bank Mill, I think, if you're northern, it's really important to go there and see where everything started, because so many of us in the north aren't originally from here at all. We came up here because of the Industrial Revolution, and it's like, this is what your ancestors would have been doing. Don't be like, oh my gosh, yes, I would have lived in this big house. It is very much like, no, you would have been here. And to see it all, and to see all of that technology and that amazing kind of innovation from like 200 years ago it's mind-blowing. And the grounds are beautiful at Quarry Bank, and you can spot planes. So that's good. It's got it all. Lyme Park is completely different kettle of fish, really. Mainly if you have watched the BBC's adaptation of Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth. Lyme Park is Pemberley.
Oh,
Wet shirt.
Yeah, wet shirt. Yeah, and you can stand where he stood in all of the different places. And if you're lucky, you get to talk to me, and I'll show you all of the places where you can stand and go, this is where he would have been. This is where he would have stood. And people will come and like go, please take a picture of me there. And you go, all right, it's fine. At Lyme, you can also dress up in Regency costume as well, which is free of charge. I don't know how it's going to work post-COVID, but it was something we did before. And we have a dressing room where they will dress you up like Mr. Darcy or Elizabeth Bennet, and you can literally walk around the grounds in a costume or have afternoon tea in your costume for free.
Laura?
yes, I'm in.
Let's do that.
I was literally just having a little daydream then about us making Instagram stories on the National Treasures page and like going, God, I want to go back. Yes.
I genuinely think Regency Gentleman is one of the fashion eras that would really suit me.
Yeah, you'd look great.
I'd look really good in a high-cut jacket and a waistcoat. Sorry, Sarah. I've lost myself in reverie.
You've sold it to us anyway. Sara Smallman, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very, very much.
Before you go, Sarah, are there any like sort of social medias for either Lyme Park, Quarry Bank Mill, or indeed yourself that you want people to, where people can find you, find out more, hopefully sooner rather than later when all this nonsense ends?
You're better looking at the National Trust Instagram page, and that will direct you through to Lyme Park and to Quarry Bank Mill. They do have a Facebook page, but that's more for information. If you want like the really good like National Trust picture porn, Instagram is your place to go, and it's nt_Lyme Park for Lyme. And I'm not quite sure what it is for Quarry Bank, to be fair, but I'm sure you'll find it if you go to the
Fuck
National
it,
Trust
Google
page.
it. Google it. It's 2021.
Google it.
Google
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. If you like us, you can follow us at Treasures Pod on Instagram and Twitter. You can email us, nationaltreasurespodcast@gmail.com, and hopefully you're either watching this on our new shiny YouTube channel or watching one of our little trailers that we've put out. Please do like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's horrible, and I feel like a 20-year-old making reaction vids, but it really does help us out. So if you can do that, share with everyone.
What's a reaction vid?
So I'd sort of film myself watching someone do something and go, fucking hell, he's cut his hair. And they make millions of pounds a year. But fuck that. That's it. At Treasures Pod. National Treasures Podcast. Laura Lexx. Will Duggan. Thanks to Sara Smallman. Sara Smallman. Got her name wrong. I edit that. Thanks to Sara Smallman.
Thank you very much
Good
for
luck.
joining us. We'll be back soon with another interview and another location that you can visit. Follow us, subscribe. We'll see you again. Goodbye.
Do svidania, comrades!